thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity you gave us this morning to gather as your church. And now, Father, because of technology, we've gathered again, Father, to do nothing but hear your word. So, Holy Spirit, we pray that you would take it and that you would root it deep in our hearts. Father, that you would cause us to overflow from your word. We know that it will accomplish what you send it forth to do. It will not return void to you. So please do what it is that your will calls for. Father, do your will, your work, your way. And we'll be sure to give you all the glory and the honor. We love you. It's in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. The book of Numbers, chapter 29. You are to hold a sacred assembly in the 7th month on the first day of the month. You are not to do any daily work. This will be a day of trumpet blast for you. Offer a burnt offering as a pleasing aroma to the Lord. 1 young bull, 1 ram, 7 male lambs a year old, all unblemished. With their grain offering of fine flour mixed with oil, 6 quarts with the bull, 4 quarts with the ram, and 2 quarts with each of the 7 male lambs. Also offer 1 male goat as a sin offering to make atonement for yourselves. These are in addition to the monthly and regular burnt offerings with their prescribed grain offerings and drink offerings. They are a pleasing aroma, a food offering to the Lord. You are to hold a sacred assembly on the 10th day of this 7th month and practice self-denial. Do not do any work. Present a burnt offering to the Lord, a pleasing aroma, 1 young bull, 1 ram, and 7 male lambs a year old. All your animals are to be unblemished. Their grain offering is to be of fine flour mixed with oil, 6 quarts with the bull, and 4 quarts with the ram, and 2 quarts with each one of the 7 lambs. Offer 1 male goat for a sin offering. The regular burnt offering with its grain offering and drink offering are in addition to the sin offering of atonement. You're to hold a sacred assembly on the 15th day of the 7th month. You do not do any daily work. You are to celebrate a 7-day festival for the Lord. Present a burnt offering, a food offering, a pleasing aroma to the Lord, 13 young bulls, 2 rams, and 14 male lambs a year old. They are to be unblemished. Their grain offering is to be of fine flour mixed with oil, 6 quarts with each one of their 13 bulls, 4 quarts with each of the 2 rams, and 2 quarts with each of the 14 lambs. Also offer 1 male goat as a sin offering. These are in addition to the regular burnt offerings with its grain and drink offerings. On the 2nd day, present 12 young bulls, 2 rams, and 14 male lambs a year old, all unblemished, with their grain and drink offerings for the bulls, rams, and lambs in proportion to their number. Also offer 1 male goat as a sin offering. These are in addition to the regular burnt offering with its grain and drink and their drink offerings. On the 3rd day, present 11 bulls, 2 rams, 14 male lambs a year old, all unblemished, with their grain and drink offerings for the bulls, rams, and lambs in proportion to their number. Also offer 1 male goat as a sin offering. These are in addition to the regular burnt offerings with its grain and drink offerings. On the 4th day, present 10 bulls, 2 rams, 14 male lambs a year old, all unblemished, with their grain and drink offerings for the bulls, rams, and lambs in proportion to their number. Also offer 1 male goat as a sin offering. These are in addition to the regular burnt offering with its grain and drink offerings. On the 5th day, present 9 bulls, 2 rams, 14 male lambs a year old, all unblemished, with the grain and drink offerings for the bulls, rams, and lambs in proportion to their number. Also offer 1 male goat as a sin offering. These are in addition to the regular burnt offering with its grain and drink offerings. On the 6th day, present 8 bulls, 2 rams, 14 male lambs a year old, all unblemished, with their grain and drink offerings for the bulls, rams, and lambs in proportion to their number. Also offer 1 male goat as a sin offering. These are in addition to the regular burnt offering with its grain and drink offerings. On the 7th day, present 7 bulls, 2 rams, and 14 male lambs a year old, all unblemished, with their grain and drink offerings for the bulls, rams, and lambs in proportion to their number. Also offer 1 male goat as a sin offering. These are in addition to the regular burnt offerings with its grain and drink offerings. On the 8th day, you are to hold a solemn assembly. You are not to do any daily work. Present a burnt offering, a food offering, a pleasing aroma to the Lord. 1 bull, 1 ram, 7 male lambs a year old, all unblemished, with their grain and drink offerings for the bulls, rams, and lambs in proportion to their number. Also, offer one male goat as a sin offering. These are in addition to the regular burnt offering with its grain and drink offerings. Offer these to the Lord at your appointed times, in addition to your vow and free will offerings, whether burnt, grain, drink, or fellowship offerings. So Moses told the Israelites everything the Lord had commanded him. Chapter 30. Moses told the leaders of the Israelite tribes, "This is what the Lord has commanded. When a man makes a vow to the Lord or swears an oath to put himself under an obligation, he must not break his word. He must do whatever he has promised. When a woman in her father's house during her youth makes a vow to the Lord or puts herself under an obligation, and her father hears about her vow or obligation she put herself under, and he says nothing to her, all her vows and every obligation she put herself under are binding. But if her father prohibits her on the day he hears about it, if none of her vows and none of her obligations she puts herself under are binding, the Lord will release her because her father has prohibited her. If a woman marries while her vows or rash commitment she herself made are binding, and her husband hears about it and says nothing to her when he finds out, her vows are binding and the obligations she put herself under are binding. But if her husband prohibits her when he hears about it, he will cancel her vow that is binding or the rash commitment she herself made, and the Lord will release her. Every vow a widow or a divorced woman puts herself under is binding on her. If a woman in her husband's house has made a vow or put herself under an obligation with an oath, and her husband hears about it, says nothing to her, and does not prohibit her, all her vows are binding, and every obligation she put herself under is binding. But if her husband cancels them on the day he hears about it, nothing that came from her lips, whether her vows or her obligation, is binding. Her husband has canceled them, and the Lord will release her. Her husband may confirm or cancel any vow or any sworn obligation to deny herself. If her husband says nothing at all to her from day to day, he confirms all her vows and obligations, which are binding. He has confirmed them because he said nothing to her when he heard about them. But if he cancels them after he hears about them, he will be responsible for her commitment. These are the statutes that the Lord commanded Moses concerning the relationship between a man and his wife, or between a father and his daughter in his house during her youth. Chapter 31. The Lord spoke to Moses, "Execute vengeance for the Israelites against the Midianites. After that, you will be gathered to your people." So Moses spoke to the people, "Equip some of your men of war. They will go against Midian to inflict the Lord's vengeance on them. Send 1,000 men to war from each Israelite tribe." So 1,000 were recruited from each Israelite tribe out of the thousands in Israel, 12,000 equipped for war. Moses sent 1,000 from each tribe to war. They went to Phinehas, son of Eleazar, the priest, in whose care were the holy objects and signal trumpets. They waged war against Midian, as the Lord had commanded Moses, and killed every male. Along with the others slain by them, they killed the Midianite kings, Eve, Rechem, Zur, Hur, and Reba, and the 5 kings of Midian. They also killed Balaam, son of Beor, with the sword. The Israelites took the Midianite women and their dependents captive, and they plundered all their cattle, flocks, and property. Then they burned all the cities where the Midianites lived, as well as all their encampments, and took all the spoils of war and the captives, both people and animals. They brought the prisoners, animals, and spoils of war to Moses, the priest Eleazar, and the Israelite community at the camp on the plains of Moab by the Jordan, across from Jericho. Moses, the priest Eleazar, and all the leaders of the community went to meet them outside the camp. But Moses became furious with the officers, the commanders of thousands, the commanders of hundreds, who were returning from the military campaign. "Have you let every female live?" he asked them. Yet there are the ones who, at Balaam's advice, incited the Israelites to unfaithfulness against the Lord in the Peor incident, so that the plague came against the Lord's community. So now, kill every male among the dependents, and kill every woman who has gone to bed with a man. But keep alive for yourselves all the young females who have not gone to bed with a man. You are to remain outside the camp for 7 days, all of you and your prisoners who have killed a person or touched the dead are to purify themselves on the 3rd day and the 7th day. Also purify everything: garments, leather goods, things made of goat hair, and every article of wood. Then the priest Eleazar said to the soldiers who had gone to battle, "This is the legal statute the Lord commanded Moses. The gold, silver, bronze, iron, tin, and lead, everything that can withstand a fire, you are to pass through the fire, and it will be clean. It must still be purified with the purification water. Anything that cannot withstand the fire, pass through the water. On the seventh day, wash your clothes, and you will be clean. After that, you may enter the camp." The Lord told Moses, "You and the priest Eleazar and the family heads of the community are to take account of what was captured, people and animals. Then divide the captives between the troops who went out to war and the entire community. Set aside a tribute for the Lord from what belongs to the fighting men who went out to war. One out of every 500 people, cattle, donkeys, sheep, and goats. Take the tribute from their half and give it to the priest Eleazar as a contribution to the Lord. From the Israelites' half, take one out of every 50 from the people, cattle, donkeys, sheep, and goats, all the livestock, and give them to the Levites who perform the duties of the Lord's tabernacle." So Moses and the priest Eleazar did as the Lord commanded Moses. The captives remaining from the plunder the army had taken totaled 675,000 sheep and goats, 72,000 cattle, 61,000 donkeys, and 32,000 people, all the females who had not gone to bed with a man. The half portion of those who went out to war numbered 337,500 sheep and goats, and the tribute to the Lord was 675 from the sheep and goats. From the 36 cattle, the tribute to the Lord was 72. From the 30,500 donkeys, the tribute to the Lord was 61. And from the 16,000 people, the tribute to the Lord was 32 people. Moses gave the tribute to the priest Eleazar as a contribution for the Lord, as the Lord had commanded Moses. From the Israelites' half, which Moses separated from the men who fought, the whole community's half was 337,500 sheep and goats, 36,000 cattle, 30,500 donkeys, and 16,000 people. Moses took one out of every 50 selected from the people and the livestock of the Israelites' half. He gave them to the Levites who perform the duties of the Lord's tabernacle as the Lord had commanded him. The officers who were over the thousands of army, the commanders over thousands and of hundreds, approached Moses and told him, "Your servants have taken a census of the fighting men under our command, and not one of us is missing. So we have presented to the Lord an offering of the gold articles each man found, armlet, bracelets, rings, earrings, and necklaces to make atonement for ourselves before the Lord." Moses and the priest Eleazar received from them all the articles made out of gold. All the gold of the contribution they offered the Lord from the commanders of thousands and of hundreds was 420 pounds. Each of the soldiers had taken plunder for himself. Moses and the priest Eleazar received the gold from the commanders of thousands and of hundreds and brought it into the tent of meeting as a memorial for the Israelites before the Lord. Chapter 32. The Reubenites and the Gadites had a very large number of livestock. When they surveyed the lands of Jazer and of Gilead, they saw that the region was a good one for livestock. So the Gadites and Reubenites came to Moses, the priest Eleazar, and the leaders of the community, and said, "The territory of Atroth, Dibon, Jazer, Nimrah, Heshbon, Elah, Sebam, Nebo, and Beon, which the Lord struck down before the community of Israel, is good land for livestock, and your servants own livestock." They said, "If we have found favor with you, let this land be given to your servants as a possession. Don't make us cross the Jordan." But Moses asked the Gadites and Reubenites, "Should your brothers go to war while you stay here? Why are you discouraging the Israelites from crossing into the land the Lord has given them? That's what your ancestors did when I sent them from Kadesh Barnea to see the land. After they went up as far as Eshcol Valley and saw the land, they discouraged the Israelites from entering the land the Lord had given them. So the Lord's anger burned that day, and he swore an oath. Because they did not remain loyal to me, none of the men 20 years old or more who came up from Egypt will see the land I swore to give Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. None except Caleb, son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, and Joshua, son of Nun, because they did remain loyal to the Lord. The Lord's anger burned against Israel, and he made them wander in the wilderness 40 years until the whole generation that had done what was evil in the Lord's sight was gone. And hear you, a brood of sinners, stand in your ancestors' place, adding even more to the Lord's burning anger against Israel. If you turn back from following him, he will once again leave his people in the wilderness, and you will destroy all of them." Then they approached him and said, "We want to build sheep pens here for our livestock and cities for our dependents, but we will arm ourselves and be ready to go ahead of the Israelites until we have brought them into their place. Meanwhile, our dependents will remain in the fortified cities because of the inhabitants of the land. We will not return to our homes until each Israelite has taken possession of his inheritance. Yet we will not have an inheritance with them cross the Jordan and beyond, because our inheritance will be across the Jordan to the east." Moses replied to them, "If you do this, if you arm yourselves for battle before the Lord, and every one of your armed men crosses the Jordan before the Lord until he has driven his enemies from his presence, and the land is subdued before the Lord, afterward you may return and be free from obligation to the Lord and to Israel, and this land will belong to you as a possession before the Lord. But if you don't do this, you will certainly sin against the Lord. Be sure your sin will catch up with you. Build cities for your dependents and pens for your flocks, but do what you have promised." The Gadites and Reubenites answered Moses, "Your servant will do just as my Lord commands. Our dependents, wives, livestock, and all our animals will remain here in the cities of Gilead, but your servants are equipped for war before the Lord and will go across to the battle as my Lord's orders." So Moses gave orders about them to the priest Eleazar, Joshua son of Nun, and the family heads of the Israelite tribes. Moses told them, "If the Gadites and Reubenites cross the Jordan with you, every man in the battle formation before the Lord, and the land is subdued before you, are to give them the land of Gilead as a possession. But if they don't go across with you in battle formation, they must accept the land in Canaan with you." The Gadites and Reubenites replied, "What the Lord has spoken to your servant is what we will do. We will cross over in the battle formation before the Lord into the land of Canaan, but we will keep our hereditary possession across the Jordan." So Moses gave them, the Gadites, Reubenites, and half the tribe of Manasseh, son of Joseph, the kingdom of King Sihon of the Amorites, the kingdom of King Og of Bashan, the land including its cities with the territories surrounding them. The Gadites rebuilt Dibon, Ataroth, and Aor, Sophon, Jazer, and Jogbah, Beth Nirmah, Beth Haran, as fortified cities, and built sheep pens. The Reubenites rebuilt Heshbon, Elah, and Kirithmin, as well as Nebo, Meon, whose names were changed, and Sibmah. They gave names to the cities they rebuilt. The descendants of Machir, son of Manasseh, went to Gilead, captured it, and drove out the Amorites who were there. So Moses gave Gilead to the clan of Machir, son of Manasseh, and they settled in it. Jar, a descendant of Manasseh, went and captured their villages, which he renamed Jar's villages. Nobal went and captured Kenath, with its surrounding villages, and called it Nobal after his name. Drink break. Chapter 33. These were the stages of the Israelites' journey when they went out of the land of Egypt by their military divisions under the leadership of Moses and Aaron. At the Lord's command, Moses wrote down the starting point of the stages of their journey. These are the stages listed by their starting points. They traveled from Ramsey in the first month of the 15th day of the month. On the day after Passover, the Israelites went out defiantly in the sight of all of the Egyptians. Meanwhile, the Egyptians were burying every firstborn male, and had struck down among them, for the Lord executed judgment against their gods. The Israelites traveled from Ramses and camped at Succoth. They traveled from Succoth and camped at Ethan, which is on the edge of the wilderness. They traveled from Ethan, turned back to Phi-Haroth, which faces Baal Zephon, and camped before Migdol. They traveled from Phi-Haroth and crossed through the middle of the sea into the wilderness. They took a three-day journey into the wilderness of Etham and camped at Marah. They traveled from Marah to Elam. There were 12 springs and 70 date palms at Elam, so they camped there. They traveled from Elam and camped by the Red Sea. They traveled from the Red Sea and camped in the wilderness of Sin. They traveled from the wilderness of Sin and camped in Dophkon. They traveled from Dophkon and camped in Elush. They traveled from Elush and camped in Rephidim, where there was no water for the people to drink. They traveled from Rephidim and camped in the wilderness of Sinai. They traveled from the wilderness of Sinai and camped at Kibroth Havaton. They traveled from Kibroth Havaton and camped at Harost. They traveled from Hazeroth and camped in Ruthmon, and traveled from Ruthmon and camped in Rimmon Perez. They traveled from Rimmon Perez and camped at Libnah. They traveled from Libnah and camped at Rasa. These city names are just as bad as the people's names, huh? They traveled from Risnah and camped in Ki Halath. They traveled from Ki Halath and camped at Mount Sephner. They traveled from Mount Sephner and camped at Haradah. They traveled from Haradah and camped at Machalath. They traveled from Machalath and camped at Tophath. They traveled from Tophath and camped at Terah. They traveled from Terah and camped at Mithkon. They traveled from Mithkon and camped at Hashmanoah. They traveled from Hashmanoah and camped at Moseroth. They traveled from Moseroth and camped at Benacheken. They traveled from Benacheken and camped at Horah-Haggadid. They traveled from Horah-Haggadid and camped at Jotbathan. They traveled from Jotbatha and camped at Abranah. They traveled from Abranah and camped at Ezon Gerber. They traveled from Ezon Gerber and camped in the wilderness of Zin, that is Kadesh. They traveled from Kadesh and camped at Mount Hor, on the edge of the land of Edom. At the Lord's command, the priest Aaron climbed Mount Hor and died there on the first day of the 15th month in the 40th year after the Israelites went out from the land of Egypt. Aaron was 123 years old when he died at Mount Hor. At that time, the Canaanite king of Arad, who lived in the Negev in the land of Canaan, heard the Israelites were coming. They traveled from Mount Hor and camped at Zalmonah. They traveled from Zalmonah and camped at Panan. They traveled from Panan and camped at Oboth. They traveled from Oboth and camped in Abiram on the border of Moab. They traveled from Iam and camped at Dibon Gad. They traveled from Dibon Gad and camped at Alam de Blatham. They traveled from Alam de Blatham and camped in the Abiram range facing Nebo. They traveled from the Abiram range and camped on the plains of Moab by the Jordan across from Jericho. They camped by the Jordan from Beth Cheshmoth to Achaia Meadow on the plains of Moab. The Lord spoke to Moses in the plains of Moab by the Jordan across from Jericho. Tell the Israelites, when you cross the Jordan in the land of Canaan, you must drive out all of the inhabitants of the land before you, destroy all their stone images and cast images, and demolish all their high places. You're to take possession of the land and settle in it, because I have given you the land to possess. You're to receive the land as an inheritance by lot according to your clans. Increase the inheritance for a large clan and decrease it for a small one. Whatever place the lot indicates for someone will be his. You will receive the inheritance according to your ancestral families. But if you don't drive out the inhabitants of the land before you, those you allow to remain will become barbs for your eyes and thorns for your sides. They will harass you in the land where you will live. And what I had planned to do to them, I will do to you. Chapter 34. The Lord spoke to Moses, command the Israelites and say to them, when you enter the land of Canaan, it will be allotted to you as an inheritance with these borders. Your southern side will be from the wilderness of Zin along the boundary of Edom. Your southern border on the east will begin at the east end of the Dead Sea. Your border will turn south of the Scorpion's Ascent, proceed to Zin, and end south of Kadesh Baran. It will go to Hazar Adar and proceed to Asmon. The border will turn to Asmon to the brook of Egypt, where it will end at the Mediterranean Sea. Your western border will be the coastline of the Mediterranean Sea. This will be your western border. This will be your northern border. From the Mediterranean Sea, draw a line to Mount Hor. From Mount Hor, draw a line to the entrance of Hamath, and the border will reach Zedad. Then the border will go to Zephron and end at Hazar Enan. This will be your northern border. For the eastern border, draw a line to Hazer Enan to Sephanim. The border will go down from Sephanim to Rabal, east of Aon. It will continue down and reach the eastern slope of the Sea of Chethrath. Then the border will go down to the Jordan and end at the Dead Sea. This will be your land, defined by its borders on all sides. So Moses commanded the Israelites, "This is the day you are to receive by lot as an inheritance, which the Lord commanded to be given to the 9.5 tribes. From the tribe of Reuben's descendants and the tribe of Gad's descendants have received their inheritance according to their ancestral families, and half the tribe of Manasseh has received its inheritance. The 2.5 tribes have received their inheritance across the Jordan east of Jericho toward the sunrise." The Lord spoke to Moses, "These are the names of the men who are to distribute the land as an inheritance for you, the priests Eleazar and Joshua son of Nun. Take one leader from each tribe to distribute the land. These are the names of the men: Caleb son of Jephunneh from the tribe of Judah, Shemuel son of Amminadab from the tribe of Simeon's descendants, Elidad son of Chislon from the tribe of Benjamin, Buki son of Jogali, a leader from the tribe of Dan's descendants. From the sons of Joseph, Haniel son of Ephod, a leader from the tribe of Manasseh's descendants, Kemuel son of Shiptan, a leader from the tribe of Ephraim's descendants, Elizaphan son of Parnak, a leader from the tribe of Zebulun's descendants, Palatai son of Azan, the leader from the tribe of Ishkar's descendants, Ahudud son of Shelemi, a leader from the tribe of Asher's descendants, Padal son of Amminadab, a leader from the tribe of Naphtali's descendants. These are the ones the Lord commanded to distribute the inheritance to the Israelites in the land of Canaan. Chapter 35. The Lord spoke to Moses in the plains of Moab by the Jordan across from Jericho. Command the Israelites to give cities out of their hereditary property for the Levites to live, and pasture land around the cities. The cities will be for them to live in, and their pasture lands will be for their herds, flocks, and their other animals. The pasture lands of the cities you are to give to the Levites will extend from the city wall 500 yards on every side. Measure 1,000 yards outside the city of the east side, 1,000 yards for the south side, 1,000 yards for the west side, and 1,000 yards for the north side, with the city in the center. This will belong to them as pasture lands for the city. The cities you give the Levites will include 6 cities of refuge, which you will provide so that the one who kills someone may flee there. In addition to these, give 42 other cities. The total number of cities you give the Levites will be 48 along with their pasture lands. Of the cities that you give from the Israelites' territory, you should take more from a larger tribe and less from a smaller tribe. Each tribe is to give some of its cities to the Levites in proportion to the inheritance it receives. The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the Israelites and tell them, when you cross the Jordan into the land of Canaan, designate cities to serve as the cities of refuge for you, so that every person who kills someone unintentionally may flee there. You will have the cities as a refuge from the avenger, so that the one who kills someone will not die until he stands trial before the assembly. The cities you select will be your 6 cities of refuge. Select 3 cities across the Jordan and 3 cities in the land of Canaan to be cities of refuge. These 6 cities will serve as a refuge for the Israelites and for the alien or temporary resident among them, so that anyone who kills a person unintentionally may flee there. If anyone strikes a person with an iron object and death results, he is a murderer. The murderer must be put to death. If anyone has in his hand a stone capable of causing death and strikes another person and he dies, the murderer must be put to death. If anyone has in his hand a wooden object capable of causing death and strikes another person and he dies, the murderer must be put to death. The avenger of blood himself is to kill the murderer. When he finds him, he is to kill him. Likewise, if anyone in hatred pushes a person or throws an object at him with malicious intent and he dies, or if any hostility he strikes him with his hand and he dies, the one who struck him must be put to death. He is a murderer. The avenger of blood is to kill the murderer when he finds him. But if anyone suddenly pushes a person without hostility, or throws any object at him without malicious intent, or without looking drops a stone that could kill a person and he dies, he was not his enemy and didn't intend to harm him. The assembly is to judge between the person who kills someone and the avenger of blood according to their ordinances. The assembly is to protect the one who kills someone from the avenger of blood. Then the assembly will return him to the city of refuge he fled to, and he must live there until death of the high priest who was anointed with the holy oil. If the one who kills someone ever goes outside the border of the city of refuge he fled to, the avenger of blood finds him outside the border of his city of refuge and kills him, the avenger will not be guilty of bloodshed. For the one who killed a person was supposed to live in the city of refuge until the death of the high priest. Only after the death of the high priest may the one who has killed a person return to the land he possesses. These instructions will be a statutory ordinance for you throughout your generations wherever you live. If anyone kills a person, a murderer is to be put to death based upon the word of witness, but no one is to be put to death on the testimony of one witness. You are to accept a ransom for the life of someone who is guilty of murder. He must be put to death. Oh, you are not to accept a ransom for the life of someone who is guilty of murder. He must be put to death. Neither should you accept a ransom for the person who flees to the city of refuge, allowing him to return and live in the land before the death of the high priest. Do not defile the land where you live, for bloodshed defiles the land, and there can be no atonement for the land because of the blood that is shed on it, except by the blood of the person who shed it. Do not make the land unclean where you live and where I dwell, for I, the Lord, reside among the Israelites. Chapter 36. The family heads of the clan of the descendants of Gilead, the son of Machir, son of Manasseh, who were from the clans of the sons of Joseph, approached and addressed Moses and the leaders who were heads of the Israelite families. They said, "The Lord commanded my Lord to give the lands of an inheritance by lot to the Israelites. My Lord was further commanded by the Lord to give our brother Zelophehad's inheritance to his daughters. If they marry any of the men from the other Israelite tribes, their inheritance will be taken back away from our father's inheritance and added to that of the tribe into which they marry. Therefore, part of our allotted inheritance would be taken away. When the Jubilee comes for the Israelites, their inheritance will be added to that of the tribe into which they marry, and their inheritance will be taken away from the inheritance of our ancestral tribe." So Moses commanded the Israelites at the word of the Lord, "What the tribe of Joseph's descendants says is right. This is what the Lord has commanded concerning Zelophehad's daughters. They may marry anyone they like, provided they marry within the clan of their ancestral tribe. No inheritance belonging to the Israelites is to transfer from tribe to tribe, because each of the Israelites is to retain the inheritance of his ancestral tribe. Any daughter who possesses an inheritance from an Israelite tribe must marry someone from the clan of her ancestral tribe, so that each of the Israelites will possess the inheritance of their father. No inheritance is to transfer from one tribe to another, because each of the Israelite tribes is to retain its inheritance. The daughters of Zelophehad did as the Lord commanded Moses. Mahlah, Tirzah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Noah, the daughters of Zelophehad, married cousins on their father's side. They married men from the clans of the descendants of Manasseh, son of Joseph, and their inheritance remained within the tribe of their father's clan. These are the commands and ordinances the Lord commanded the Israelites through Moses in the plains of Moab by the Jordan across from Jericho. Deuteronomy, chapter 1. These are the words Moses spoke to all Israel across the Jordan in the wilderness in Arabah, opposite Suph, between Paran and Tophel, Laban, Hazroth, and Dilsabad. It is an 11-day journey from Horeb to Kadesh Baran by way of Mount Seir. In the 40th year, in the 11th month, on the first of the month, Moses told the Israelites everything the Lord had commanded him to say. This was after he had defeated King Sihon of the Amorites, who lived in Heshbon, and King Og of Bashan, who lived in Ashroth of Eder. Across the Jordan in the land of Moab, Moses began to explain this law, saying, "The Lord our God spoke to us at Horeb. You have stayed at this mountain long enough. Resume your journey and go to the hill country of the Amorites and their neighbors in the Arabah, the hill country, the Judean foothills, the Negev, and the seacoast, to the land of the Canaanites, and to Lebanon as far as a great river, the Euphrates River. See, I have set the land before you. Enter and take possession of the land the Lord swore to give to your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and their future descendants. I said to you at that time, I can't bear the responsibility for you on my own. The Lord your God has so multiplied you that today you are as numerous as the stars of the sky. May the Lord, the God of your ancestors, increase you 1,000 times more and bless you as he promised. But how can I bear your troubles, burdens, and disputes myself? Appoint yourselves wise, understanding, and respected men from each of your tribes, and I will make them your leaders. You reply to me, what you propose to do is good. So I took the leaders of your tribes, wise and respected men, and set them over you as leaders, commanders for thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens, and officers for your tribes. I commanded your judges at that time, hear the case between your brothers, and judge rightly between man and his brother, or his resident alien. Don't show partiality when deciding a case. Listen to small and great alike. Do not be intimidated by anyone, for judgment belongs to God. Bring me any case too difficult for you, and I will hear it. At that time I commanded you about all the things you were to do. We then set out from Horeb and went across all the great and terrible wilderness you saw on the way to the hill country of the Amorites, just as the Lord our God had commanded us. When we reached Kadesh Barnea, I said to you, you have reached the hill country of the Amorites, which the Lord our God is giving us. See, the Lord God has set the land before you. Go up and take possession of it, as the Lord, the God of your ancestors, has told you. Do not be afraid or discouraged. Then all of you approached me and said, let's send men ahead of us, so that they may explore the land for us and bring us back a report about the route we should go up and the cities we will come to. The plan seemed good to me, so I selected 12 men from among you, 1 man from each tribe. They left and went up to the hill country and came to the Eshcol Valley, scouting the land. They took some of the fruit from the land in their hands, carried it down to us, and brought us back a report. The land the Lord God is giving us is good, but you were not willing to go up. You rebelled against the command of the Lord your God. You grumbled in your tents and said, the Lord brought us out of the land of Egypt to hand us over to the Amorites in order to destroy us because he hates us. Where can we go? Our brothers have made us lose heart, saying, the people are larger and taller than we are, and cities are large and fortified to the heavens. We also saw the descendants of the Anakim there. So I said to you, don't be terrified or afraid of them. The Lord your God who goes before you will fight for you, just as you saw him do for you in Egypt. And you saw in the wilderness how the Lord carried you as a man carries his son along the way you traveled until you reached this place. But in spite of this, you did not trust the Lord your God, who went before you on the journey to seek out a place for you to camp. He went in the fire by night and in the cloud by day to guide you on the road you were to travel. When the Lord heard your words, he grew angry and swore an oath. None of these men in this evil generation will see the good land I swore to give their ancestors, except Caleb, son of Jephunneh. He will see it, and I will give him and his descendants the land on which he has set foot, because he remained loyal to the Lord. But the Lord was angry with me also because of you, and said, you will not enter there neither. Joshua, son of Nun, who attends you, will enter it. Encourage him, for he will enable Israel to inherit it. Your children who you said would be plunder, your sons who don't yet know good from evil will enter there. I will give them the land and they will take possession of it. But you are to turn back and head for the wilderness by the way of the Red Sea. You answered me, we have sinned against the Lord. We will go up and fight just as the Lord our God commanded us. Then each of you put on his weapons of war and thought it would be easy to go up into the hill country. But the Lord said to me, tell them, don't go up and fight, for I am not with you to keep you from being defeated by your enemies. So I spoke to you, but you didn't listen, and you rebelled against the Lord's command and defiantly went up into the hill country. The Amorites who lived there came out against you and chased you like a swarm of bees. They routed you from Seir as far as Hormah. When you returned, you wept before the Lord, but he didn't listen to your requests or pay attention to you. For this reason, you stayed in Kadesh as long as you did. Chapter 2. Then we turned back and headed for the wilderness by the way of the Red Sea, as the Lord had told me, and we traveled around the hill country of the Seir for many days. The Lord then said to me, "You've been traveling around this hill country long enough. Turn north. Command the people you're about to travel through the territory of your brothers, the descendants of Esau, who live in the Seir. They will be afraid of you, so be very careful. Don't provoke them, for I will not give you any of the land, not even a foot of it, because I have given Esau the hill country of Seir as his possession. You may purchase food from them, so that you may eat, and buy water from them to drink. For the Lord your God has blessed you in all the work of your hands. He has watched over the journey through this immense wilderness, and the Lord your God has been with you these past 40 years, and you have lacked nothing." So we bypassed our brothers, the descendants of Esau, who lived in Seir. We turned away from the Arabah road, and from Ethlon and Izab-Gerber. We traveled along the road to the wilderness of Moab. The Lord said to me, "Show no hostility toward Moab, and do not provoke them to battle, for I will not give you any of their land as a possession, since I have given Ar as a possession to the descendants of Lot. The Emim, a great and numerous people as tall as the Anakim, had previously lived there. They were also regarded as Rephaim, like Anakim, though the Moabites called them Emim. The Horites had previously lived in Seir, but the descendants of Esau drove them out, destroying them completely and settling in their place, just as Israel did in the land of its possession the Lord gave them. The Lord said, "Now get up and cross the Zered Valley." So we crossed the Zered Valley. The time we spent traveling from Kadesh Barnea until we crossed the Zered Valley was 38 years, until the entire generation of fighting men had perished from the camp, as the Lord had sworn to them. Indeed, the Lord's hand was against them to eliminate them from the camp until they had all perished. When all the fighting men had died among the people, the Lord spoke to me. "Today you're going to cross the border of Moab at Ar. When you get close to the Ammonites, don't show any hostility to them or provoke them, for I will not give you any possession or give you any of the Ammonites' land as a possession. I have given it as a possession to the descendants of Lot. This, too, used to be regarded as the land of the Rephaim. The Rephaim lived there previously, though the Ammonites called them Zamazuman, a great numerous people, tall as Anakim. The Lord destroyed the Rephaim at the advance of the Ammonites, so that they drove them out and settled in their place. This was just as he had done for the descendants of Esau who lived in Seir when he destroyed the Horites before them. They drove them out, and they lived in their place until now. The Caphtorim, who came from Caphtor, destroyed the Avakites, who lived in villages as far as Gaza, and settled in their place. The Lord also said, "Get up and move on and cross the Aron Valley. See, I have handed the Amorite kings Sihon of Heshbon and his land over to you. Begin to take possession of it. Engage him in battle. Today I will begin to put the fear and dread of you on the peoples everywhere under heaven. They will hear the report about you, tremble, and be in anguish because of you." So I sent messengers with an offer of peace to King Sihon of Heshbon from the wilderness of Kedoth, saying, "Let us travel through your land. We will keep strictly to the highway. We will not turn to the right or to the left. You can sell us food in exchange for silver so we may eat, and give us water for silver so we may drink. Only let us travel through on foot, just as the descendants of Esau who had lived in Seir did for us, and the Moabites who lived in Ar, until we crossed the Jordan into the land of the Lord of our God is giving us." But King Sihon of Heshbon would not let us travel through his land, for the Lord your God had made his spirit stubborn and his heart obstinate, in order to hand him over to you, as has now taken place. Then the Lord said to me, "See, I have begun to give Sihon and his land to you. Begin to take possession of it." So Sihon and his whole army came out against us in the battle of Jahaz. The Lord our God handed him over to us. We defeated him, his sons, and his whole army. At that time we captured all his cities and completely destroyed the people of every city, including the women and children. We left no survivors. We took only the livestock and the spoil of the cities. We captured as plunder for ourselves. There was no city that was inaccessible to us from Aor to the rim of the Aron Valley, along with the city in the valley, even as far as Gilead. The Lord our God gave everything to us, but you did not go near the Ammonites' land all along the bank of the Jabbok River, the cities of the hill country, or any place the Lord our God had forbidden. Chapter 3. Then we turned and went up the road of Bashan, and King Og of Bashan came out against us with his whole army to do battle at Edrei. But the Lord said to me, do not fear him, for I have handed him over to you, along with his whole army and his land. Do to him as you did to King Sihon of the Amorites, who lived in Heshbon. So the Lord our God also handed over King Og of Bashan and his whole army to us. We struck him until there were no survivors left. We captured all his cities at that time. There wasn't a city that we didn't take from them. 60 cities in the entire region of Argob, the valley or the kingdom of Og in Bashan. All of these were fortified like high walls, with high walls, gates, and bars, besides a large number of rural villages. We completely destroyed them as we had done to King Sihon of Heshbon, destroying the men, women, and children of every city. But we took all the livestock and the spoil from the cities as plunder for ourselves. At that time we took the land from the 2 Amorite kings across the Jordan, from the Aron Valley as far as Mount Hermon, which the Sidonians called Siron, but the Amorites called Sinner. All the cities of the plateau, Gilead and Bashan, as far as the south, Salek and Edrei cities of Og's kingdom in Bashan. Only King Og of Bashan was left of the remnant of the Rephaim. His bed was made of iron. Isn't it in Rabah, the Amorites? It is 13.5 feet long and 6 feet wide by the standard measure. At that time, we took possession of this land. I gave the Reubenites and Gadites the area extending from the Anor by the Aron Valley and half the hill country of the Gilead, along with its cities. I gave to half the tribe of Manasseh the rest of Gilead and all of Bashan, the kingdom of Og. The entire region of Argob, the whole territory of Bashan, used to be called by the land of Rephaim. Jair, a descendant of Manasseh, took over the entire region of Argob as far as the border of the Gereshonites and Machites. He called Bashan by his own name, Jair's villages, as it is today. I gave Gilead to Machir. I gave the Reubenites and Gadites the area extending from Gilead to the Aron Valley. The middle of the valley was the border, and up to the Jabbok River, the border of the Ammonites. The Arabah and Jordan are also borders from Chinnereth as far as the sea of the Arabah, the Dead Sea, under the slopes of the Pisgah on the east. I commanded you at that time, the Lord your God had given you this land to possess. All your valiant men will cross over into battle formation ahead of your brothers, the Israelites. But your wives, dependents, and the livestock, I know that you have a lot of livestock, will remain in the cities I have given you until the Lord gives rest to your brothers as he has to you. And they also take possession of the land of the Lord your God is giving them across the Jordan. Then each of you return to his possession that I have given you. I commanded Joshua at the time, your own eyes have seen everything the Lord your God has done to these 2 kings. The Lord will do the same to all the kingdoms you are about to enter. Don't be afraid of them, for the Lord your God fights for you. And at that time I begged the Lord, Lord God, you have begun to show your greatness and your strong hand to your servant. For what God is there in heaven or on earth who can perform deeds and mighty acts like yours? Please let me cross over and see the beautiful land on the other side of the Jordan that good hill country of Lebanon. But the Lord was angry with me because of you and would not listen to me. The Lord said to me, that's enough. Do not speak to me again about this matter. Go to the top of Pisgah and look to the west, north, south, and east, and see it with your own eyes, for you will not cross the Jordan. But commission Joshua and encourage and strengthen him, for he will cross over ahead of the people and enable them to inherit this land you will see. So he stayed in the valley facing Beth Peor. Chapter 4. Now Israel listened to to the statutes and ordinances I am teaching you to follow, so that you may live. Enter and take possession of the land that the Lord, the God of your ancestors, is giving you. You must not add anything to what I command you, or take anything away from it, so that you may keep the commands of the Lord your God, I am giving you. Your eyes have seen what the Lord did to Baal Peor, for the Lord your God destroyed every one of you who followed Baal Peor. But you who have remained faithful to the Lord your God are alive today. Look, I have taught you statutes and ordinances, as the Lord my God has commanded me, so that you may follow them in the land you are entering to possess. Carefully follow them, for this will show your wisdom and understanding in the eyes of the people. When they hear about these statutes, they will say, "This great nation is indeed wise and understanding people." For what great nation is there that has a God near to it as the Lord our God is to us whenever we call to him? And what great nation has righteous statutes and ordinances like the entire law I set before you today? Only be on your guard and diligently watch yourself, so that you don't forget the things your eyes have seen, so that you don't slip from your mind as long as you live. Teach them to your children and your grandchildren. The day you stood before the Lord your God at Horeb, the Lord said to me, "Assemble the people before me, and I will let them hear my words, so that they may learn to fear me all the days that they live on the earth, and may instruct their children." You came near and stood at the base of the mountain, a mountain blazing with fire into the heavens and enveloped in a total black cloud. Then the Lord spoke to you from the fire. You kept hearing the sound of the words, but didn't see a form. There was only a voice. He declared his covenant to you. He commanded you to follow the 10 Commandments, which he wrote down on 2 stone tablets. At that time, the Lord commanded me to teach you the statutes and ordinances for you to follow in the land you are about to cross into and possess. Diligently watch yourselves, because he did not see any form on that day, and the Lord spoke to you out of the fire at Horeb. So you don't act corruptly and make an idol for yourselves in the shape of any figure, a male or a female form, or in the form of any animal on the earth, any winged creature that flies in the sky, or any creature that crawls on the ground, or any fish in the waters under the earth. When you look at the heavens and see the sun, moon, and stars, all the stars in the sky, do not be led astray to bow and worship to them and serve them. The Lord your God has provided them for all the people everywhere under heaven. But the Lord selected you and brought you out of Egypt's iron furnace to be a people of his inheritance, as you are today. The Lord was angry with me on your account. He swore that I would not cross the Jordan, enter the good land the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance. I won't be crossing the Jordan, because I am going to die in this land. But you are about to cross over and take possession of this good land. Be careful not to forget the covenant of your Lord God that he made with you, and make an idol for yourselves in the shape of anything that he has forbidden. For the Lord your God is a consuming fire, a jealous God. When you have children and grandchildren and have been in the land a long time, and if you act corruptly, make an idol in any form of anything, and do what is evil in the sight of the Lord your God, angering him, I call heaven and earth as a witness against you today, that you will quickly perish from the land you are about to cross the Jordan to possess. You will not live long there, but you will certainly be destroyed. The Lord will scatter you among the peoples, and you will be reduced to a few survivors among the nations where the Lord your God will drive you. There you will worship man-made gods of wood and stone, which cannot see, hear, eat, or smell. But from there you will search for the Lord your God, and you will find him when you seek him with all your heart and all your soul. When you are in distress, and all these things have happened to you in the future, you will return to the Lord your God and obey him. He will not leave you, destroy you, or forget the covenant with your ancestors that he swore to them by oath, because the Lord your God is a compassionate God. Indeed, ask about the earlier days that preceded you, from the day that God created mankind on the earth, from one end of the heavens to the other. Has anything like this great event ever happened, or has anything like it been heard of? Has the people heard God's voice speaking from the fire as you have and lived? Or has a God attempted to go and take a nation as his own out of another nation by trials, signs, wonders, and war, by a strong hand and an outstretched arm, by the great terrors that the Lord your God did for you in Egypt before your eyes? Before your eyes. You were shown these things so that you would know that the Lord is God. There is no other beside him. He let you hear his voice from heaven to instruct you. He showed you his great fire on earth, and you heard his words from the fire. Because he loved your ancestors, he chose their descendants after them and brought them out of Egypt by his presence and great power, to drive out before you nations greater and stronger than you, and to bring you into and give you their land as an inheritance, and as is now taking place. Today, recognize and keep in mind that the Lord is God in heaven and above on earth. Below there is no other. Keep his statutes and commands which I am giving you today, so that you and your children after you may prosper, so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you for all time. Then Moses set apart 3 cities from across the Jordan to the east. Someone could flee there who committed manslaughter, killing his neighbor accidentally without previously hating him. He could flee to one of these cities and stay alive. Bezer in the wilderness on the plateau land belonging to the Reubenites, Ramoth in Gilead belonging to the Gadites, and Golan in Bashan belonging to the Manassites. This is a law Moses gave the Israelites. There are decrees, statutes, and ordinances Moses proclaimed to them after they came out of Egypt. Across the Jordan in the valley facing Beth Peor in the land of King Sihon of the Amorites, he lived in Heshbon, and Moses and the Israelites defeated him after they came out of Egypt. They took possession of his land and the land of Og, king of Bashan, the 2 Amorite kings who were across the Jordan to the east, from Aor on the rim of the Arnon Valley as far as Mount Sion, which is Hermon, and all the Arabah on the east side of the Jordan as far as the Dead Sea below the slopes of Pisgah. Drink break. Chapter 5. Moses summoned all of Israel and said to them, Israel, listen to the statutes and ordinances I am proclaiming to you. Hear them today, learn and follow them carefully. The Lord our God made a covenant with us at Horeb. He did not make this covenant with our ancestors, but with all of us who are alive here today. The Lord spoke to you face to face from the fire on the mountain. At that time I was standing between the Lord and you to report the word of the Lord to you, because you were afraid of the fire and did not go up the mountain. And he said, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the place of slavery. Do not have other gods besides me. Do not make an idol for yourself in the shape of anything in the heavens above, or on the earth below, or in the waters under the earth. Do not bow and worship to them, and do not serve them, because I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, bringing the consequences of the father's iniquity on the children to the 3rd and 4th generations of those who hate me, but showing faithful love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commands. Do not misuse the name of the Lord your God, because the Lord will not leave anyone unpunished who misuses his name. Be careful to remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy as the Lord your God has commanded you. You are to labor 6 days and do all your work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath to the Lord your God. Do not do any work, you, your son, your daughter, your male or female slave, your ox or donkey, any of your livestock or resident alien who lives within your city gates, so that your male and female slaves may rest as you do. Remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God brought you out of there with a strong hand and outstretched arm. This is why the Lord your God has commanded you to keep the Sabbath day. Honor your father and your mother as the Lord your God has commanded you, so that you may live long and so that you may prosper in the land the Lord your God is giving you. Do not murder. Do not commit adultery. Do not steal. Do not give dishonest testimony against your neighbor. Do not covet your neighbor's wife or desire your neighbor's house, his field, his male or female slave, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. The Lord spoke these commands in a loud voice to your entire assembly from the fire, cloud, and total darkness on the mountain. He added nothing more. He wrote them on 2 stone tablets and gave them to me. All of you approached me with your tribal leaders and elders when you heard the voice from the darkness and while the mountain was blazing with fire. You said, Look, the Lord our God has shown us his glory and greatness, and we have heard his voice from the fire. Today we have seen that God speaks with person, yet he still lives. But now, why should we die? This great fire will consume us, and we will die if we hear the voice of the Lord our God any longer. For who out of all humanity has heard the voice of the living God speaking from the fire as we have and lived? Go near and listen to everything the Lord our God says. Then you can tell us everything the Lord our God tells you. We will listen and obey. The Lord heard your words when you spoke to me. He said to me, I have heard the words of these people have spoken to you. Everything they have said is right. If only they had such a heart to fear me and keep my commands always, so that they and their children would prosper forever. Go and tell them, return to your tents. But you stand here with me, and I will tell you every command, the statutes and ordinances you are to teach them, so that they may follow them in the land I am giving you to possess. Be careful to do as the Lord your God has commanded you. You are not to turn aside to the right or to the left. Follow the whole instruction the Lord your God has commanded you, so that you may live, prosper, and have a long life in the land that you will possess. Chapter 6. This is the command, the statutes and ordinances the Lord your God has commanded me to teach you, so that you may follow them in the land you are about to enter and possess. Do this so that you may fear the Lord your God all the days of your life, by keeping his statutes and commands I am giving you, your son, your grandson, and so that you may have a long life. Listen, Israel, and be careful to follow them, as you may prosper and multiply greatly, because the Lord, the God of your ancestors, has promised you a land flowing with milk and honey. Listen, Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. These words that I am giving you today are to be in your heart. Repeat them to your children. Talk about them when you sit in your house and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Bind them as a sign on your hand, and let them be a symbol on your forehead. Write them on the doorposts of your house and on your city gates. When the Lord your God brings you into the land he swore to your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that he would give you, a land with large and beautiful cities that you did not build, houses full of every good thing that you did not fill with, and cisterns that you did not dig, and vineyards and olive groves that you did not plant. And when you eat and are satisfied, be careful not to forget the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the place of slavery. Fear the Lord your God, worship him, and take an oath in his name. Do not follow other gods, the gods of the peoples around you. For the Lord your God who is among you is a jealous God. Otherwise, the Lord your God will become angry with you and obliterate you from the face of the earth. Do not test the Lord your God as you tested him at Massah. Carefully observe the commands of the Lord your God, the decrees and statutes he has commanded you. Do what is right and good in the Lord's sight, so that you may prosper, and so that you may enter and possess the good land the Lord your God swore to give your ancestors, by driving out all your enemies before you, as the Lord has said. When your son asks you in the future, what is the meaning of these decrees, statutes, and ordinances that the Lord our God has commanded you, tell him, we were slaves of Pharaoh in Egypt, but the Lord brought us out of Egypt with a strong hand. Before our eyes the Lord inflicted great and devastating signs and wonders on Egypt, on Pharaoh and all his household. But he brought us from there in order to lead us in and give us the land that he swore to our ancestors. The Lord commanded us to follow all these statutes and to fear the Lord our God for our prosperity always, and for our preservation as it is today. Righteousness will be yours if we are careful to follow every one of these commands before the Lord our God, as he has commanded us. 6 minutes. Should we try it? Chapter 7. When the Lord your God brings you into the land you are entering to possess, and he drives out many nations before you, the Hittites, Girgashites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, 7 nations more numerous and powerful than you. And when the Lord your God delivers them out over to you and you defeat them, you must completely destroy them. Make no treaty with them and show them no mercy. You must not intermarry with them, and you must not give your daughters to their sons and take their daughters for your sons, because they will turn your sons away from me to worship other gods. Then the Lord's anger will burn against you, and he will swiftly destroy you. Instead, this is what you are to do to them. Tear down their altars, smash their sacred pillars, cut their Asher poles down, and burn their carved images. For For you are a holy people belonging to the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you to be his possession out of all the peoples on the face of the earth. The Lord had his heart set on you and chose you, but not because you were more numerous than all the peoples, for you were the fewest of all the peoples, but because the Lord loved you and kept the oath he swore to your ancestors. He brought you out with a strong hand and redeemed you from the place of slavery, from the power of Pharaoh king of Egypt. Know that the Lord your God is God, the faithful God who keeps his gracious covenant loyalty for 1,000 generations with those who love him and keep his commands. But he directly pays back and destroys those who hate him. He will not hesitate to pay back directly the one who hates him. So keep the command, the statutes and ordinances that I am giving you to follow today. If you listen to and are careful to keep these ordinances, the Lord your God will keep his covenant loyalty with you as he swore to your ancestors. He will love you, bless you, and multiply you. He will bless your offspring and the produce of your land, your grain, your new wine, and fresh oil, the young of your herds, and the newborn of your flocks, in the land he swore to your ancestors that he would give you. You will be blessed above all peoples. There will be no infertile male or female among you or your livestock. The Lord will remove the sickness from you, and you will not be put on you all the terrible diseases of Egypt that you know about, but he will inflict them on all who hate you. You must destroy all the people the Lord your God is delivering over to you, and not look on them with pity. Do not worship their gods, for that will be a snare to you. If you say to yourself, these nations are greater than I, how can I drive them out? Do not be afraid of them. Be sure to remember that the Lord your God did. Be sure to remember what the Lord your God did to Pharaoh and all of Egypt. The great trials that you saw, the signs and wonders, the strong hand and outstretched arm by which the Lord your God brought you out. The Lord your God will do the same to all these people you fear. The Lord your God will also send hornets against them until all the survivors and all those hiding from you perish. Don't be terrified of them, for the Lord your God, a great awesome God, is among you. The Lord your God will drive out these nations before you little by little. You will not be able to destroy them all at once, otherwise the wild animals will become too numerous for you. The Lord your God will give them over to you and throw them into great confusion until they are destroyed. He will hand their kings over to you, and you will wipe out their names from under heaven. No one will be able to stand against you. You will annihilate them. Burn up the carved images of their gods. Don't covet the silver and gold on the images and take it for yourself, or else you will be ensnared by it, for it is detestable to the Lord your God. Do not bring any detestable thing into your house, or you will be set apart for destruction like it. You are to abhor and detest it utterly, because it is set apart for destruction. Well, God bless you. I love you. That is the Blessing Hour with PT, and we are at chapter 8 in the morning. So I hope to see you here in the morning, 6 o'clock, if the Lord wills. I pray that this has been a blessing to you. If it has, please share, like, and share it. Let other people have it. God bless you. I love you. I will see you guys in the morning.